Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. In this video, we're doing my month in review for November 2022. How many books did I read? What genres? What are my top 3 books for November? My worst 3 books for November? And some books that I think are really good reads just didn't make the top 3. How many books did I read last month, November? I read in total 28 books. That was helped in part by having some vacation time in November. I had 2 weeks vacation time and I spent quite a lot of that reading some books, so I was able to catch up on a bit of reading. But what genres did I read in that month? Let's find out. Fantasy, 9 books. Thrillers, 6 books. Horrors, 4 books. Historical, 1 book. Cozy mysteries, 3 books. Mystery and crime, 4 books. Sci-fi, 1 book. You can see in November again a whole range of genres, but fantasy did take the cake for that month, and I'm trying to get into quite a few fantasy books, so I do like the genre. It was probably the first genre that I fell in love with as a reader, as a teenager, was fantasy fiction. And I do want to get back into some fantasy fiction because there's some great books out there. I want to reread some classic fantasy and read a lot of new fantasy that I haven't read before. What were my top 3 books for November 2022? The first is The Death of the Black Widow, written by James Patterson and J.D. Barker. I love this book, everything about it. The plot, the characters, the twists and turns, everything in this book I think was just superb. I think this book would make a great TV series. I'm hoping one day someone makes it into a TV series, so I think it'd be worth the watch. This is a thrilling story. It's basically about, main character is a guy who starts off as a rookie in the police force, and we see bits of his life. We see a big section when he's on his first day as a rookie. Then we see another section when he's a detective. He makes detective on the police force. And then we see another section as we go later on and something else happens in his career. But all through this story, he is trying to find out more about this strange woman that he comes across on his first day on the force. And this woman is at a crime scene. They think she's a victim and she escapes. And from then on, he's learning more about her and trying to find out the truth about this strange woman. And it culminates into this big, thrilling moment towards the end. But I think it is a great book. And I'm so glad that I read this. I'm finding there's some great James Patterson co-authored books coming out lately. The second book in my top 3 for November 2022 is The Exorcist, written by William Peter Blatty. This was a classic horror story, in my opinion. The slow burn psychological moments and the true horror moments, those really shocking horror moments, even though you know the story, it's been around for so long. I've seen the movie many years ago. I haven't read the book before, my first time reading this book. But even though I'd seen the movie, the moments in the book are still shocking, still very engaging and gripping, and still quite chilling. Reading about the young teenage girl going through those changes when she's possessed, it's so chilling in the book, described so well, and all the characters are so well written in this book. And that's one of the great strengths in this book, in my opinion, is the characters and the slow build-up of the psychological tension in this book. And the horror elements don't play a major part in the book, so it's more about the psychological tension and the great characters, and that setup that the author does in this book is just superb. I think this is a great horror novel, and I think if you like horror, if you haven't read this before, read the book. Even if you've seen the movie, go and read the book anyway. To round out my top 3 books for November 2022 is Flowers in the Attic, written by Virginia Andrews. It's the first time I've read this. I don't know why it's taken me so long to read this book. I recall watching the movie a few times as a teenager, but I never read the book. But anyway, this book I thought was written so well. All the characters are just brilliant. The whole setup is so brilliant, and just having most of the book in 2 rooms. So it's the bedroom and then the attic. That's the space the author has to play with for most of this book. And I think to do that with these characters, especially characters that are children and teenagers, I think that was just brilliant writing. And all those characters, those children and teenagers, are written so well. They don't feel forced. They don't feel fake. They feel like real kids, for most of the time anyway. So I think the author's done a great job with this book, and I can see why it was a bestseller, because it's very gripping, very engaging. the characters are so endearing and engaging as well. Of course, there's big moments in this book, and if you've seen the movie, you know what those big moments are, but it's just a brilliant book, and it makes me want to read the whole of this series and then dig into more Virginia Andrews books. I just thought it was a great book. Now for my least favourite 3 for November 2022. The first is Snap, written by Belinda Bauer. The blurb of this book promised so much, but the book didn't deliver. The execution, the whole story, the way it's written, and the plot just doesn't make up what the blurb promised. And the characters weren't well written in my opinion. And there are just moments in this book that don't feel real. They feel too over the top to be real, even for a thriller. And I know thrillers are meant to have some over the top moments because we want that as readers. We want to be excited and engaged in a book. And sometimes those over the top moments really draw us in. But in this book, it just felt a bit disjointed. It just felt too unlikely to happen. And I didn't get the fact that we've got children who are living alone, and these children are very young, living alone for 2 years, I think it was in the book, no parents around, not going to school, and nobody checks up on them. Nobody checks up, where are your parents? That wouldn't make sense. And that was the whole basis of a big chunk of this story, was the fact that we've got kids living alone in a house, fending for themselves with no parents. And, you know, we can't believe that is going to happen in real life. So I put that in the book. I just really didn't enjoy that part, and I didn't enjoy the book really as a whole. Bird Box by Josh Melamine is another book that's my least favourite for November 2022. I haven't seen the movie yet on Netflix, and it's the first time I've read this book. And I wasn't very impressed. I thought the writing style wasn't very good. I thought there were just things in there that didn't make sense. So again, it's a book that has things that are key parts of its plot that don't make sense. You know, how can this lady Mallory, how can she rear 2 children from birth to 4 years old, alone in a house, no medication, they can't open their eyes when they go outside? You know, how can she fend for them? Where do they get their food, water, medicine from? I mean, what happens if those kids get sick? What happens if she gets sick? No, it's a lot to ask the reader to believe that that's actually going to happen at any time in life, even in a fiction book, when sometimes we extend reality a little bit. I just didn't believe that would happen. So if you can't believe the general concept, the build-up of the story, I don't think you're going to enjoy the book that much. And I didn't really enjoy this book at all. The last book to round out this section is Ali Cross, Secret Detective, written by James Patterson. And it surprised me with this book because this is the 3rd book in the Ali Cross series, and I enjoyed the first 2 very much. But this book just isn't a mystery at all. So the series is meant to be a mystery series, a young adult mystery series, but this book, there's no mystery. And it's all about a debate about policing practices. That's what the whole book's about. So I found that very strange. They were meant to have a mystery series, but you want to just hijack the mystery element, just kick it out of this book altogether, and just have the whole book about a debate about policing. So it just didn't make me enjoy this book at all. The characters are still okay in the book, but the whole theme, the whole concept of the book was very poor in my opinion. I'll mention 2 books that didn't make the top 3, but are still worthy enough to mention in this video. The first is The Big Dark Sky, written by Dean Koontz. I've been waiting for a recent Dean Koontz book that I really like and I really enjoy. This book is it. It was just a really well written book, well plotted, well crafted, great characters, great villains and heroes. And in his recent books, it just seems Dean Koontz wasn't getting that balance right. But in this book, everything is believable. Of course, we've got over the top moments, and the whole concept is over the top because it's a sci-fi, horror, drama, fantasy, thriller, and it's got some really big moments in this book as well. And it really grips you. This book hooked me straight away. And the villain character in this book really hooked me as well, because it's a villain that you can imagine will happen in real life. And it's very chilling, this villain character. and very gripping and engaging. I really enjoyed this read, and I'm hoping this means that Dean Koontz is getting back to the style and the books that were so wonderful in the 70s, 80s and 90s and early 2000s, because I know Dean Koontz can write very well. He's proven that, and he's written so many books and sold so many books worldwide, but I just want him to get back to that time when all his books were just fabulous and you knew that every Dean Koontz book was going to be a great read. I'm hoping this is just a hint that he's going back to that time, and I can't wait to read the next Dean Koontz book. Gallant by V.E. Schwab. It's the first time I've read this author, and I was surprised by this book, personally surprised. It's a fantasy, and the main character is so well written, and I thought it would be very, very difficult for the author to write a book with a main character like this. So it's a main character who doesn't speak, doesn't even make a sound. So having a main character like that in many, many scenes in the book, how do you go about writing a book without dialogue? But the author does that very well. And it's so well written, this character is so well crafted, you're just hooked and engaged in this story from the very first chapter. I really enjoyed this book, and it makes me want to read more from this author. And I just found that as I was reading this, it just felt effortless. The writing style felt effortless, and it made the reading of it effortless as well. I just think it's a really great book, and I think it's on the list this year as one of the nominees for Book of the Year in its category. And I just think it will deserve a win. If this book wins, it's well deserved because it's so well written. There you have my very condensed monthly review for November 2022. All the books that I read for the month by genre, 3 that I enjoyed the most, 3 that I enjoyed the least, and just 2 books there that are so worthy of a mention. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of those books that I've mentioned, and all the books that I've read for the month I'll put in the description of this video as well if you want to go through that list. I'd like to know if you've read any of those books and what you thought, because I think speaking about books and sharing our views on books is half the fun of reading. On my channel, I do review many books in many different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe.